With most games, it's easy to tell what the original idea was. He's a hedgehog that runs fast, or it's a game about two survivors in the post-apocalypse. By knowing that starting idea, it's easier for me to understand what the vision behind the game is, and therefore I can recognize the artistic choices behind the game. I have absolutely no idea what the original concept behind Katherine was. Was the genesis of this game making a surreal puzzle platformer? Telling a cautionary tale about cheating and how it can mentally destroy you? Or was it all an excuse for some anime titties? Whatever the answer may be, it makes it incredibly hard to identify patterns and correlations in Katherine's explicit art style. Still, I suppose that's the curse of trying to understand the mind of a Japanese developer with more coke than honor. Like many of Atlus's games, Katherine is heavily inspired by anime, cel-shaded art style, 2D illustrated cutscenes, and the game shares many story tropes often found in harem anime. The crossover between 2D and 3D is a bit jarring in Katherine, as it happens pretty frequently, although this is only an 8-hour game, so I suppose they did seem far more condensed than they did in Persona 5. It feels like the debauchery of the main game is lost in these cutscenes. It's a credit to how well done they are, but I miss the grungy look of the 3D models in these cutscenes. Vincent is a dirty guy, both figuratively and literally, and his model helps make him look disheveled, yet everyone looks pristine in these anime cutscenes. I'm definitely just looking for things to whine about, as these are magnificently crisp animations, but their beauty comes at the cost of losing some of the filth that I think is integral to this game. As this is a dirty game, Vincent's apartment is anything but hygienic, and of course there are the, let's call them selling points of the game. Most of that dirtiness is exemplified by the lighting. Vincent's apartment looks like it's falling apart in parallel to his life, and the only natural source of light is the open window, which directly shines onto his bed, which could represent the link that his sleep has with his more religious experiences. His floor remains coated in shadow. I think a nice touch would have been to have Vincent fall out of bed every morning if his decisions were more on the chaotic side, as a nice but maybe too on-the-nose reference to what fate he was resigning himself to. The other prominent location, the stray sheep, is also quite sleazy, despite the glamour of key areas. Once again, lighting is used incredibly well here. The floorboards are sequestered in a bath of black to hide bloodstains, booze, or whatever else may seep into the floor of a bar. You're unlikely to notice this, as it's in sharp contrast to the dazzle where the developers want you to look. The illustrious bar with Boss gleaming behind it, a canvas of ethanol further back to set the stage and entice you to buy that one last trip to heaven. The round spotlight over the island of red velvet carpet, adorned by a piano, lends more credence to the jazz bar aesthetic that Atlus is trying to pull off. The stray sheep feels cozy, and more of a home than Vincent's apartment ever did, a place to relax, unwind, and let all those secrets he keeps bottled up inside loose to all his confidants. But of course, that's just the real world, and in comparison, it's the far more uninteresting side of the game to talk about. The abstract nightmares are the real meat and potatoes, or tits and ass of this game. I'm sorry, I had to. The infernal spires Vincent must ascend every night is where the psychological horrors of Katherine reside. I don't think it's a coincidence that the obstacle Vincent needs to overcome every night is a tower, because Atlus as a studio is known for intertwining certain characters with the arcana of the tarot. The tower in the arcana is a representation of catastrophe and of massive life changes, very much in turn with what Vincent goes through during the game. I also believe that the way the game is played, by rearranging the pieces of the tower to ascend it, represent how Vincent needs to make severe changes to his lifestyle if he wishes to see the other side of this calamity he's been placed in. The boss designs of Katherine are simply gore-tastic. Each one is a perverse, traumatic manifestation of Vincent's commitment issues. Each one pertains to an issue brought up to Vincent during that day, and his obscene conjuration of that concept gives a psychological look into Vincent. Due to their fittingly nightmarish design, I can extrapolate that Vincent spends most of his day internally terrifying himself over these real-world concepts, and views them as a threat to his way of life, no matter how immoral that way of life may be, although that's at the discretion of the player. But if there's one thing Atlus has got down at this point, it's designing demons, and Katherine is no exception to their macabre magnificence. Able to strike the perfect balance of bizarre and blood-curdling, Katherine represents Atlus's most gruesome artistic designs. The soundtrack to Katherine is diverse, to say the least. You have smooth jazz playing at the stray sheep, and heart-pounding ballads to get you to climb as fast as you can at night. Sometimes the music has to be perverse and erotic, other times it needs to be blood-curdling and ghoulish. Although, you made a fatal mistake, Atlus. I would have gladly taken a listen to more of your original tracks on this jukebox at the Stray Sheep. And much like Vincent, when I should have been focused on this game's music so I could write about it in this review, I was tempted by a foul but familiar mistress, giving me glances from across the bar, and like the hopeless simp I am, I bolted from my seat to turn on the smooth jazz of Persona 5. I'm sorry, Katherine, but as soon as you let that pretty little thing saunter into this game, you never stood a chance. But I've got to talk about the negative, and that's the level design. I don't like discussing difficulty in games, as everyone comes to every game with a different skill level. The problem with platformers is that level design is directly tied to difficulty. It's not that Katherine's puzzles are too challenging or too easy, it's that there's no middle ground. Either the solution is simple as pulling out a single block, or you're faced with an entire wall of trick blocks, and you fall to your death before you can even figure out the puzzle. It didn't feel like I was presented with an obstacle and used my deductive reasoning to figure it out. I was either stumped or sprinting, and I wish there was some level of in-between for this game to shine in. But once again, that's all totally dependent on your personal level of problem-solving skills. Katherine's world is a mix of subdued, real-world, mellow locations and traumatic torments of the subconscious. It makes marvelous use of its animation budget on scenes so rich I'm surprised it didn't get an anime adaptation like Atlus's other big-name games. Its dirty art style works on multiple thematic levels, and features some of Atlus's most abominable bosses to date. Playing Katherine is one of the best mistakes I've ever made.